Before any of us learned to design our futures, the block designed us. The Stoops, the corner store, the schoolyards, the basketball courts, those places didn't just exist around us, they shaped us. They molded our confidence, our rhythm, our community, our worldview. Welcome back to Black by Design. Today we're talking about the architecture of the neighborhood, how places shape identity, how environment becomes our foundation, and why the block is one of the most powerful design influences in our life. I grew up in the South Bronx between the late 80s, early 90s. A time when the block wasn't just where you lived, it was where you became. Your block was your first teacher, your first safety net, your first critic, your first cheerleader. It was the lady on the fourth floor who yelled at you from the window when you're doing too much. It was the corner store guy who saw you grow up and knew your whole family tree. It was the stoop where you learned to roast, to observe, to listen, to tell stories. It was community, built by us, for us. Now, let's talk about how neighborhood is community, how neighborhood is the blueprint, or in our case, the black print, how neighborhood is design. Again, growing up in the South Bronx wasn't easy, but it was rich. Not rich in money, but rich in culture, and characters, and lessons, and in community. People took care of each other. If your mother worked late, 5 neighbors stepped in. If you fell on the playground, kids you didn't even know helped you up. If someone was struggling, the block rallied. We were not wealthy, but we weren't alone. The block gave you quick wit, survival instincts, emotional intelligence, style, situational awareness, humor, grit. You learned very early. You don't walk through this world alone. You walk with your block behind you. So question, what block raised you? What part of the block still lives inside you today? Now, let's break down the elements, the architecture of the neighborhood. Because the block is not just physical space, it's cultural design. When you grow up in a black or brown neighborhood, the places aren't just places, they're institutions. So, let's talk about them. But first, can you think of some of those institutions? The first one is the stoop, which, for all of us, is our first classroom. The stoop was the gossip channel, the debate stage, the runway show, the comedy club, you already know. The therapy coach, the storytelling center. This is where you learn to read people, to throw a little shade too, to help hold space, to defend yourself, to use your voice, to perform, to laugh at yourself. If you could last on a stoop, you can survive anywhere. A stoop is kind of like New York. Number 2, the corner store, or as some like to call it, the bodega. That was the neighborhood nerve center. The bodega owner knew everybody. He knew who was hungry, who needed a favor, who was going through something, who needed to put something on the tab. It wasn't just a store. It was a pantry, mediator, watchtower, neighborhood historian. It made sure the community did not collapse. And 3, we can't forget about the barbershop or the hair salon. And that's where identity was designed. Those were the first original community think tanks. You learned politics. Some may be on the wrong side of history, but I digress. Style. You learn how to talk to people, how to take a joke, also how to give one, how to listen. Those spaces sharpened us, humbled us, and affirmed us. And then 4, you have the court or the playground, and that's where ego and discipline was born. You learn hierarchy, confidence, teamwork, competition, how to handle losing, but also how to handle winning. Every block had a future star, athlete, a comedian, a leader, a troublemaker, and even a protector. And then 5, you had the block parties. That's joy as public infrastructure. This was the one time the neighborhood exhaled together. Music blasting, kids everywhere, you got your aunties, your uncles, your cousins dancing, barbecue smoke in the air. It was our version of a cultural festival. Informal, but sacred. So, out of these infrastructures, what places shaped you the most? Was it the stoop? Was it the court, the corner store, the hair salon? Did those places still guide you today? Now, all in all, right, if we are thinking of one person who captured this architecture, who preserved it, who amplified it, and honored it in his work, it's our blueprint of the week. Can you guess? If you guessed this, it's Spike Lee. Then you guessed right. Spike Lee is not just a filmmaker. He's an architectural historian of black neighborhoods. This man documented our block with precision and respect that no one ever else attempted. But let's go deep on why he matters for this episode. Spike made the block a character. It was a living, breathing force. In Do the Right Thing, Crooklyn, and more, the neighborhood isn't just scenery. It has a personality. It has tension. It has a heartbeat. It has memory. He understood something profound. Neighborhood shapes behavior, neighborhood shapes relationships, and the neighborhood shapes identity. He captured stoop culture, bodegas, street murals, aunties yelling down windows, brownstones, court energy, music blasting from the cars. He preserved that blueprint. Spike showed the world the complexity of black neighborhoods, not the stereotypes, and that's important because he refused to flatten us. Instead, he showed joy and conflict side by side, beauty and pressure coexisting together, political awakenings, family dynamics, neighborhood legends, generational cycles, black love, black grief, black humor. Spike didn't sanitize the block, but he didn't demonize it either. He showed it truthfully. Spike protected neighborhoods from cultural erasure. Through his films, he archived entire urban landscapes before gentrification wiped them out. He said, "Y'all might tear down the buildings, but you're not tearing down the memory." His work is a cultural museum, a time capsule of black neighborhoods. Spike also told the kids from places like the Bronx, Brooklyn, Oakland, Chicago, your world is worthy of cinema. When you grow up in a marginalized community, you're not taught to see your environment as art. Spike changed that. He let us know, your block is dramatic. Your block is cinematic. Your block is important. Your block deserves to be seen. Now, if Spike Lee captured the emotional architecture of the block, our pattern breaker for this week captures the legal, historical, and justice infrastructure tied to neighborhoods. Time to talk about somebody who fights for the community America tries hardest to forget. Our pattern breaker this week is Bryan Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, and truly one of the most important thinkers when we talk about the relationship between place and identity. This episode is about how neighborhoods shape us. And Bryan's entire philosophy centers on how environment, systemic neglect, and historical trauma determine the fate of entire communities. So here's why he matters so deeply to this conversation. Bryan Stevenson confronts how neighborhoods get targeted, criminalized, and undersupported. He forces us to ask a really important question. Why do some neighborhoods get libraries and others get police tanks? Why do some have green spaces and others have asthma clusters? Why are certain blocks seen as dangerous when they're just simply under-resourced? Bryan teaches that poverty is not an accident, it's a design choice, which means justice must also be a design choice. He exposes the pipeline between neighborhood conditions and incarceration. Bryan has repeatedly said that the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts people who come from neighborhoods marked by failing schools, polluted environments, over-policing, generational poverty, economic divestment. In Bryan's world, justice is not just about the courts. It's about community architecture. It's about redesigning the conditions that crush potential. He preserves the memory and humanity of the communities America tries to forget. His work with the National Memorial for Peace and Justice and the Legacy Museum is about documenting the reality of where we come from, especially southern towns and segregated neighborhoods. He helps people understand that mass incarceration didn't begin in the courtroom. It began in places and policies and neighborhoods that weren't never given the resources they deserved. He reminds us that to redesign the future, we must confront the architecture of the past. Bryan Stevenson's quote reframes how we see our neighborhoods. We are all more than the worst things we've ever done. But for the sake of this episode, we're going to expand on that. Our neighborhoods are more than the worst thing people say about them. More than crime stats, more than stereotypes, more than poverty narratives. Bryan's work demands that we see the fullness and humanity of the block. He's a pattern breaker because he is redesigning the narrative around black communities with compassion, with data, with truth, and with justice. Now that we've uncovered the emotional, cultural, justice architecture of the neighborhood, let's bring everything home. Because the humor, the toughness, the creativity, the empathy, the instinct, it all comes from the block. Neighborhoods may be flawed, but they're foundational. They raise us. They mold us. They teach us how to navigate the world with clarity and edge. So, as always, I'm going to leave you with a question, some reflection. What part of your block will you honor this week? What lesson did your neighborhood teach you that you're still using today? So, if this episode made you remember your block, if it made you smile, if it made you rethink the power of neighborhoods, share it with someone who grew up next to you on that same block, or someone who didn't. But be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single episode of Blk By Design. And remember, your block built you. Now, what are you building in return?